During yesterday's conference sessions, we looked at our roots as Scots, and this morning I'd like to take a little moment to look at the roots of this very conference. The first conference took place in Chicago, here at the Scottish Home in 2003. The conference was established at the request of several organizations and individuals in our Scottish North American community as a vehicle for identifying, establishing and sharing best practices, as well as for enhancing understanding, communication and cooperation within the Scottish North American community and across the Atlantic. It was started by the Chicago Scots and our founding partner, the American Scottish Foundation, more specifically by the then CEOs of the two organizations, Wayne Rethford and Alan Bain. I'd like all of us to take a moment to recognize and reflect on the accomplishments and contributions of both Alan and Wayne. They formed a personal friendship and a professional partnership that's brought great joy to them both and also great success to this community. In all likelihood, we wouldn't be meeting together today without the commitment and endeavor of Wayne and Alan. And I'm certain I am not alone in offering thanks to them both. And now, while I am pleased to offer these remarks this morning, I'm also humbled and perhaps even a little embarrassed to extend this welcome. Although I've been involved in organizing all of the Scottish North American community conferences, there have been two I have not been involved in organizing. The very first one that Alan and Wayne organized in 2003, and now this most recent one. The amount of help I've been able to give to arrange and shape 2020's conference is something between precious little and nil. That's because my 2020 has been dedicated exclusively to two pursuits: fatherhood of Bobby aged 5 and Langston age 1. That's why I look tired. And minding the Chicago Scots principal function, a senior care home called Caledonia Senior Living and Memory Care, from where I speak to you this morning. The field of senior care, as many of you will be aware, is the very front line of the war against COVID-19. And while I recognize that the nature of this virus makes the news I'm about to give you an account of what's in our rear view mirror, I am both delighted and proud to report that thanks to three things working together: luck, the grace of a higher power, and the vigilance of the staff here at Caledonia Senior Living, no residents have or have had COVID-19. Credit for organization of this conference goes to those working on and supporting the work of the host committee: John Belisai, John Cherry, Joanne Cuskin, Camilla Hellman, Kevin James, Maggie McEwen, Jamie McGeechan, and William Petrie. If I've missed anyone, I do apologize, but for putting their shoulders to the wheel, I offer them all my deepest gratitude. As John Belisai mentioned yesterday, changing one word in the name of this conference has made all the difference. By changing Scottish North American Leadership Conference to Scottish North American Community Conference, it's made explicit that this conference is open to all and that all are welcome. Therefore, the inclusive philosophy that Alan and Wayne built this conference upon is ensured. One word can make all the difference. Indeed, as we look at the relevance of identity, I'm reminded of the profound light bulb moment that we Chicago Scots experienced when we removed one small, seemingly innocuous word from our mission. We removed the word "the." Our mission to nourish the Scottish identity became nourish Scottish identity. And by removing the word "the," we recognized that multiple Scottish identities exist. This might point us in a useful direction as we tackle this year's theme. But before we can answer the question, what is the relevance of Scottish identity in a globalized world? I believe that we first need to establish what Scottish identity is. I'd like to spend what's left of my time this morning having a go from my own lived experience at defining what identity is. For as long as I can recall, questions of identity have been in my life. I was born in Dundee, moved with my family to Newcastle on Tyne when I was just 6 months old. And then when I was a 6-year-old lad with a Geordie accent, my family moved north of the border to Duns, Berwickshire. I was teased for speaking like I came from a place 70 miles to the south. I was called Sassenach, and I learned how to give and to receive bloody noses. And now I'll echo Andrew's question, Coalesh, the question I remember being asked as a boy, where do you belong? I knew that this had an immediate meaning, that this question had an immediate meaning. Where do you live? But I also recognized and knew somehow that it had several deeper meanings. But having answered that question, I can say proudly now that I was made in the Scottish borders. On the 16th of November 1992, after graduating from Stirling University, I moved to Chicago. And as an immigrant, questions about identity continued. These questions became thicker and they came faster when 3,832 days later, I realized I'd spent one more day of my life living in America than I'd spent in Scotland. And that was a major identity trip. Who am I and where do I belong? Or then on the 18th of April 2018, I proudly became an American citizen. More questions about identity. The day I became an American, we ate hamburgers and apple pie. A few weeks later, we had a block party, and then we took a family road trip across the country. We did things that made me feel American, but as an aside, I didn't actually feel truly American until I did something just a few weeks ago, and I voted in the presidential election. I'll end my remarks this morning by recalling one of the first events I attended as the new president of the Chicago Scots. It was in 2004 at a Burns supper on the south side of Chicago. Former Society Chairman Ed Rorison, whose family came from Port Glasgow, stood at the podium to introduce me. In his big, powerful voice, he called out, "Ladies and gentlemen, Gus Noble is the new president of our Scottish Society." And Ed called me up to the podium so I could introduce myself to the audience. And as I walked across the room, Ed continued. He looked me squarely in the eye and he said, "Let's help him get acquainted. Gus, the most important thing you need to understand about the Chicago Scots is that we welcome everyone who is Scottish by birth, by heritage, or simply by inclination." By the time I reached the stage, I understood something important about identity. Yes, it's about blood that flows in veins. And yes, it's about places written on birth certificates. But it's also about values in hearts and ideas in minds. I look forward this morning to hearing our speakers' views on this subject today. And so to our first speaker this morning, Joni Smith, who heads up the Scottish Government's team at the British Embassy in Washington. The Scottish Government is a valued partner to many of us at this conference, indeed to the very conference itself. It's clear to us, to me, and to those of us who organised this conference, that Joni, her deputy Rory Heatherly, and their colleagues in DC recognise that we can all do more for Scotland and the international community of Scots if we work together, if we link elbows and work together. And so I see them constantly seeking new opportunities, being ready to collaborate. For that, I offer my thanks to Joni, Rory, and their colleagues in DC. And I'm delighted to welcome to the conference this morning, Joni Smith. Thank you.